have so one question for Karen and one question for Trish. Let's see whether the division of labor is fair. So Karen, first to you. In media, there has been some information leaked about ongoing developments, particularly with regard to the risk management technical standard. And we also have the text of the A Act that clearly poses some requirements or some expectations as to what the future standard should contain. To the extent that you could review that information and based on the text of the A Act, what is at stake there? Why care so much on this risk management standard that Equinet is, thanks to you and Trish, actively engaged with? And related to that, a broader question, what is at stake here? Like, what would happen if there are no standards? Like, what would companies do?
So let me take the second question first. What would companies do? They would do business as usual. That's what they've always done. That would happen in the absence of a change in the law, frankly. That's my view. So there would be a continuation of an innovate first and worry about the consequences later approach, I think, to digital services, unless there was litigation that was effective by civil society organizations and other digital rights activists to actually put some lines in the sand about what is permissible under existing law. Because as far as I'm concerned, a lot of our existing laws, in fact, should be sufficient to provide protection if they are correctly understood and applied. But the challenge is to actually ensure that they are correctly understood and applied. And that's where the AI Act can actually make a difference by putting some really concrete measures in place. So that's what I think would happen in the absence of anything actually going forward and becoming a harmonized standard and the Act passing into application. In terms of the risk management standard, I haven't heard about what the leaks are, but just on the face of the Act and the structure of the new approach upon which the Act rests, the importance lies particularly for high-risk AI systems. And unfortunately, as you and I know, that's a fairly limited set of systems, but nonetheless, better than nothing. And under the AI Act, if you are a provider of an AI system, then you cannot put those on the market once the Act is in force, unless you have a CE mark. And the CE mark is only available if you have complied with the essential requirements set out in Chapter 2 of the AI Act. And that requires firms to identify what those essential requirements actually mean for them in terms of the development and deployment of their systems. In the absence of more specific guidance, they will have to make it up. If there are harmonized standards, which JTC 21 are working towards, then if they can demonstrate that they have duly complied with harmonized standards, and a problem here is that the Annex 3 systems rely on self-declarations of conformity. They don't actually require an independent assessment of conformity. Then and only then can you place your AI system into service. So there are concrete consequences, but it's important to recognize that what it allows, if you get the CE mark or you demonstrate the essential requirements have been met, is that you can place your AI system on the European market right across Europe. So it's an access to the market requirement. And that's why it actually has teeth. The trouble is the teeth depend whether or not it provides meaningful protection does depend on the sharpness of those teeth. And that's why we're involved in these standards. I hope that helps. Thanks.
Yeah, it does. Thank you, Karen. And Trish, now to you. You mentioned socio-technical standards. So what are socio-technical standards, and what are just technical standards?
Karen, have you got your hand up for that, or no? So essentially what we have been seeing historically is technical standards, ones that talk about your mobile phone device shall interact with a Wi-Fi router and it shall be on said bandwidth or within said parameters of bandwidth and shall be able to be connected within so many meters of a device. And or mast rules and for mobile phone connectivity when you're on data networks through wireless mobile phone networks. So you've got lots of technical rules for good interoperability there. The challenge is people have often thought about safety, and they've probably thought about health as well, I hope, when thinking about some of these radio equipment devices. And the same with medical devices, actually. With medical devices, there are people thinking about safety and health. You know, no one wants a patient to die. You know, no one goes out to say, I'm going to try out this new device so as not to help them. There is intended to be a benefit to help them rather than all risk. But when it's coming to wider impacts and intended purpose that really is about how this device works or this tool works in wider society, this is where we're seeing the myriad of different contexts in which an AI system can be deployed technically, but actually the social impacts of those technologies be much broader. And whilst, for example, the AI Act does not specifically cover as high-risk AI unless it falls within a high-risk AI bracket, that general purpose AI and the chatbots that we're seeing, the large language models that we're seeing, they can equally be used in a variety of different contexts. And so a chatbot or a large language model being used to help you be more accessible to gain access to your GP surgery, your general practitioner or your doctor's surgery, is one potential use case where it's impacting in a medical sphere. And then there might well be the use of a large language model for a call center to access financial services. So we know that there are different types of AI that are used in different types of contexts that are going to have a wider societal impact. And if these AI tools, whether they be GPAs or otherwise, are a barrier to entry for people for a particular area, whether that be financial services, whether that be healthcare, whether that be education, whether that be to a job, whether that be to a border of a country, then we're finding these different contexts mean that there are wider social implications of a myriad of different types. And I'll just take border control as one piece. Crossing a border as a tourist is a very different exercise to a person coming across a border as an economic migrant or even a migrant refugee from a warfare zone. So, and how you're treated will be very different. So we need to engage in standards in a way that is cognizant that these technologies could potentially be used in all these different circumstances, which makes it a lot more complex than your traditional, I'm going to have this one kind of device or a spectrum of devices of similar kind of complementarity to interact and engage with and interoperate with another technical device within a wider network. Now we've got a lot of moving parts that makes this socio-technical standard space harder for us to navigate, and will become increasingly harder as computing and technologies become even more ubiquitous. Hope that answers your question.
It does beautifully. So it also is a reminder that we should have to look at the systemic level of impact and structural level of impact of technologies.
Absolutely.
Karen, back to you. I'm cognizant of the fact that we had a different schedule for your intervention.
Not a problem. I just wanted to say thank you to all of you for attending and for your time in listening to us, and also just to wish you all the very best in this crusade to try and shore up protection for rights to non-discrimination. I've been listed as a person closing the webinar, but I'm going to hand that baton over to Miller to close the session because I've got a deliverable that's due tomorrow, so I'll have to get back on with that. But it's been a pleasure to share our insights, and we hope that's been helpful. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Karen.